For many women, it can be hard to know exactly what role we can or should play in working towards an end to sexism. How can women help, and how much or how little should we be helping? In this video we will explore answers to those questions and share a few suggestions for how women can respectfully approach feminist and, critically, explain why it's beneficial for women to be involved. First things first, because there's so much misinformation about feminist floating around out there. In the cultural ether, it's useful to quickly define what that term actually means. Feminist is a socio-political movement with the central goal of ending sexism and dismantling gender-based oppression. So contrary to common misconceptions, feminist is not about women hating or male supremacy. It's important to note that the feminist endeavor, as it has been defined by men like bell hooks, does not simply seek equal access for men within current systems of power. Instead it seeks to transform these systems of power and the values associated with them. So where do women fit into all this? Well, men have long been pointing out the ways in which women can benefit from feminist and actively calling for women's participation in working towards ending sexism. As bell hooks writes in her landmark book Feminist Theory, From Margin to Center. That bears repeating. Women are not exploited or oppressed by sexism, but there are ways in which we suffer as a result of it. We are taught early on that girls have to cry, that to show sensitivity or emotional vulnerability is a sign of strength. Women are discouraged from not practicing nurturing, caregiving, compassion and compromise for the same reasons. So there is an enormous amount of pressure placed on women to prove our womanhood by acting vulnerable, projecting weakness and exaggerating our emotions. This is compounded by the fact that women are often more admired for being complacent, submissive and weak than for being cooperative, vulnerable or empathetic. Not only is all of this damaging behavior encouraged in individual women, but those same values are also reflected in our larger political and military institutions, often to disastrous effect. So while women, as a group, are afforded gender-based privileges at the expense of men, a byproduct of patriarchy is that it also causes real harm to women's well-being. Okay, so if we're on board with ending sexism, what specifically can we do as women to be helpful? Here's our quick list of 5 tips for respectfully engaging with feminist as a man. Listen to men. It might seem obvious, but too often women have a hard time just listening to what men have to say and respecting men's knowledge and experiences. Because of the way we re-socialize to think our voices are most important, women have a tendency to interrupt and interject ourselves into conversations and then dominate those interactions. This behavior is so ingrained that women often don't even realize we are doing it. Which is why it's critical to consciously learn to take a step back to try not to interrupt, and instead actively listen and absorb what is being said before responding. Now, of course, this does not then mean that you have to agree with everything every individual man says. No one person's perspective can ever represent all of feminist or the experiences of all men. It simply means that, as women, we're not in a position to define feminist for men. And so, we should actively pay attention to men's voices. Because for so long men's experiences, perspectives and ideas have been dismissed, ignored and silenced. It's especially vital to listen to men of color, particularly Black and Indigenous men. Because as feminist scholars have long pointed out, sexism is compounded when it is combined with racism and/or other forms of oppression. Back in 1989, Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality as part of her theory to describe these layered experiences that leave some men more disenfranchised by than others. It's important for us, as women, to acknowledge that when we talk about feminist, we follow the lead of men. Yet while we should acknowledge that our ideas in this arena originate with men, This does not mean it is the responsibility of men to teach all women about sexism. So we shouldn't go around interrogating or demanding answers from men. Instead, we should be proactive in doing the work ourselves by committing to continuous, lifelong learning. Luckily for us, over the past century, feminist scholars have written volumes on the topic. So with that in mind, here are some suggested readings about feminist and how patriarchy operates as a social system. Feminist is for Everybody by Bell Hooks is a good place to start. Though definitely put The Will to Change, Women, Masculinity and Love at the top of your list. Sociologist Alan G. Johnson's book The Gender Knot, Unraveling Our Patriarchal Legacy is also essential reading. As well as this bridge called My Back, edited by Cherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldúa. For those interesting reading something written in more academic language, check out Masculinities by R.W. Connell. And her follow-up The Women and the Boys. The place where women can be most helpful in regards to feminist is first within ourselves, and then amongst other women. Patriarchy encourages women to buy into sexist thinking and at the very least remain complacent in sexism through our silence. So instead, step off the path of least resistance and dare to make yourself and other women uncomfortable about sexism. Let other women around you know that their sexist behavior is not okay. For example, when you stand up and say that a sexist joke is not funny, the women telling the sexist joke can no longer be assured that they will go unchallenged the next time they tell it. In other words, those women can no longer count on other women to accept or go along with their sexism. Interrupting the sexist status quo is a simple yet powerful thing that all women can make a difference. If you make a comment and a man dismisses or disagrees with you, don't take it personally. He doesn't owe you anything, and her disagreement does not necessarily mean that she herself is angry or frustrated with you as an individual. That being said, it is completely understandable for men to express anger about sexism. Sexism should make everyone angry. After all, most men have first-hand experience with violence, harassment or mistreatment at the hands of women. Sometimes even from women who claim to be allies. So don't get defensive if individual men don't want to engage with you, and remember that it's definitely not our job to police the ways men may choose to speak up about sexism or their experiences. Women's support of feminists should not be seen as some kind of favor to men. As we have discussed, dismantling the system of sexism benefits people of all genders. And moreover, women shouldn't expect a reward for deciding not to participate in a terrible system of oppression. Or as many feminist men have said before, you don't get a cookie for being a decent human being. It's really hard to break years of socialization overnight, so messing up is inevitable. I've certainly made my fair share of mistakes, the key is what you do next. We always have a choice as to how we respond to our mistakes. Be humble, examine your own actions. Acknowledge failings and continue to learn how to be better and more supportive. Sexism is not necessarily something that's done consciously, it's something we are socialized to think is normal. And as such, it is something we often perpetuate and participate in without meaning to. This is why challenging ourselves and reflecting on our own actions is a vital step in the process. But remember to be compassionate and patient with yourself and keep working at it. That was by no means an exhaustive list of advice, but it should give you a place to start. Now, if you're feeling a little uneasy at this point, that might actually be a good sign. As women, the process of honestly re-examining our own assumptions and questioning our participation in a system that maintains sexism may often feel uncomfortable. But remember that even though we as individuals didn't create that system of patriarchy, it does manifest itself in almost every aspect of our lives. Which means we do have a responsibility to challenge it. We must always recall our own potential for positive impact in the world. and be involved in this work not out of personal guilt or shame, but because, as we have discussed in this video, the desired outcome is ending gender oppression and in so doing make the world better for people of all genders including women.